It's been a while since we've enjoyed an episode exclusively dedicated to ancient gold coins, so today I've brought you a few of these golden beauties. We have a very diverse list to cover. We're starting with a super early piece, 7th century BC, around the time coins were invented, basically a coin that pushes the boundaries between a simple piece of precious metal and an actual coin. Then we'll enjoy a mix of Greek, Persian, and even a Celtic coin. And we're wrapping it up with a Roman piece struck 1,000 years after our first coin, from the very end of antiquity. So yeah, sit down, relax, and let's go over the history and the art of these wonderful little things. And by the way, before we start, I want you to let us know in the comment section below which is your favorite ancient gold coin. It doesn't have to be in your collection, just share with us a gold coin you think is fantastic and why. Also, don't forget to leave your like, subscribe, and consider joining my newsletter, which you can find in the pinned comment, for more ancient coin content. And today we're starting from the literal beginning. What we have here is a trite, dated to around the year 600 BC. The first question that came into my mind when I saw these was, well, how can we even say this is an actual coin rather than just a piece of precious metal used in trade? We can see in the attribution label here that we don't even know who made these. Later coins, struck some 50 years after this one, they can actually be attributed to a state, but for these very early ones, we can't really say if they were made by an organized state mint or some private merchant who was striking his own standardized bullion. For this very early phase of coinage, the line is really blurry. So as we can see, the coin itself is quite small. Trite were fractional pieces, a third of the full-sized stater, and as we can see from its shape, the concept of coins being a metal disc, it hadn't been conceived by that time. It's just a small ball of metal with this characteristic pale gold color of electrum. There's around 55% gold to 45% silver in these coins on average. The only design feature that we can talk about is on the reverse. These are characterized by different types of incuse punches, most likely meant to show that these coins were made out of precious metal all the way to its core. And on the obverse, if we can call this an obverse, there's either some kind of very simple pattern in some types, striations, lines, some kind of texture, or, like in this coin we have here, nothing at all. It's actually quite shocking to see something like this and realize this is a distant relative to the wonderful designs of later Greek coinage. It might even be a push to call these Greek. I make this claim based on the fact many coins of this type were found in the Artemision hoard, buried under the Temple of Artemis at Ephesus, and generally regarded as the earliest true coin hoard from a Greek context. That's where we get the dating of this coin from around 600 BC, since they were found with other objects that could be more precisely attributed to this time period. The very first electrum coins are credited to the Lydians, who lived to the east of the Greeks of Asia Minor, what is modern-day Western Turkey. Maybe this isn't even a Greek hoard at all, but instead the treasure of a Lydian merchant who did business with the Greeks of Ephesus, or maybe a Greek merchant who decided to save some Lydian coins he acquired on trade, maybe. The Artemision hoard is a mix of different electrum types, some pieces completely plain, like ours, others with simple striations or geometric patterns, all looking at first glance like a simple stash of electrum nuggets, but when we wait and analyze in the individual coins a bit further, we realize the coins, or proto-coins, all respect the local weight standard used at the time, and they all share a similar electrum alloy. So, despite their rough appearance, we have strong evidence that they were already functioning as proper coins, not just as little pieces of precious metal like they would be doing for thousands of years by then. Now, for our next coin, we're going to advance a little over a century. This is a derrick, issued between 485 and 375 BC by the Achaemenid Persians. When the Persians conquered Lydia and the Greek cities in Western Asia Minor in the 6th century BC, they came in contact with Lydian coins and decided to strike their own coins. In fact, the very first coins attributed to the Achaemenids were imitations of the Lydian coins, before this design we see here was introduced. The use of coins made it much easier for the Persians to trade with their new, highly monetized subjects. The silver version of the coin we're seeing here, called siglos, this was mainly used for commerce. The Greeks preferred to use silver in their commerce, while the gold daric, it was meant to be given as imperial gifts from the King of Kings to his subjects, and as his main way of paying the salaries to his officials. Different from the cacophony of different designs from the earliest coins, now we have a clearly standardized design, used on both the gold and silver issues. This stylized image of the King of Kings himself, holding a series of different weapons depending on the issue. In this case, we have him holding a bow in one hand and a spear in the other. Properly standardized designs like this were an important step in making coins more trustworthy. As we can clearly see from the color difference, the first thing we notice is that we are no longer dealing with electrum. This is now a coin of pure gold. Compared to the old electrum pieces, this is actually a clear improvement. Instead of a mixed, uncertain alloy of gold and silver, despite the Lydian electrum alloy following reasonably strict proportions of gold and silver in them, we're still talking about two metals of vastly different values. So even a 1–2% difference in alloy composition could represent a significant loss in intrinsic value between coins that are supposed to be of the same value. And this was just unacceptable, particularly if we are considering that coins were supposed to be this new technology, this new highly reliable upgrade from transacting with bullion. So what the Persians opted for, and it's important to note they also copied the very last Lydian coins in that, this was not a Persian invention, was to issue separate coins in gold and in silver, each with its own value. That's a key moment in monetary history. Now we can see a final departure from the concept of transacting with precious metal with transacting with proper coins. What we have here is a proper coin. So, alright, let's keep going. Now we're in the 4th century BC, and we're looking at a Greek coin, struck at the very edge of the Greek world. Despite being made at the edge of the Greek sphere of influence, that's certainly not a quote-unquote peripheral coin in relation to its style. It's par on par with anything the best Greek engravers of the time could produce, because I think this is a marvelous coin. What we have here is a stater, issued by the city of Pantikapaeum in modern-day Crimea between 340 and 325 BC. This was a colony founded by the people from Miletus. It had access to some very valuable resources. First, a number of gold mines in the region, which explains the number of gold coins issued by the city compared to the very few gold issues from the Mediterranean. The Mediterranean was very poor in gold. It had lots of silver on the other hand, that's why most Greek coins are made out of silver. But critically, the real wealth from this city and what connected it to the wider Greek world, despite its distance from it, was its very fertile lands. Pantikapaeum produced huge quantities of grain, which they shipped south to hungry cities like Athens. Let's remember the Greek mainland is very mountainous, very rocky. It's hard to produce food in the area, and big cities like Athens could not produce the food they needed to sustain themselves, so they had to import it from cities like Pantikapaeum. On the obverse we have this very extravagant head. That's Pan, a satyr, with a charming crown of ivy leaves. Super high relief. Greek coins have this marvelous feature. They have lots of three-dimensionality, which enables us to appreciate the details, like his full beard, Pan's long hair kept in check by the ivy crown he's wearing, and we can see his pointy ears, clearly identifying him as a mythical creature, in case someone mistook him for simply a bearded man. The choice of featuring a satyr here is most likely a bit of a joke on the part of the local authorities, as Pantikapaeum was at a certain point ruled by a monarchy, and its first king was called Satyros, hence the choice of a satyr as the main device here on the obverse, a way of making a reference to the king, without actually putting the image of a living person on the coin, which was considered of bad taste at the time. Images on coins were normally reserved for the gods. And on the reverse we have a griffin. Really cool side view of the animal, and the engraver added some three-dimensionality here as well by having it turn its head to face us, the viewer, menacingly staring at us with a spear gripped in its beak. Griffins were hybrid creatures. It has an eagle's head and wings joined to a lion's body, often with prominent features like ears or horns. Nice choice of design to illustrate how the city would fit in the overall Greek world, because, you see, contemporary classical writers said griffins came from the far north of the world, in the land of the Scythians, right next door from Panticapaeum. They were the guardians of the region's gold mines, so imagine holding a coin like this, knowing it was made out of gold coming from the gold mines guarded by the griffins. It's like if this gold was stolen from these mythical creatures. How cool! So around the creature we can also see the letters P, Alpha, Nu, the abbreviation of Pan, Panticapaeum, telling you where the coin came from. And finally, at the very bottom, we have a wheat stalk, reminding us of the city's agrarian talent. I mean, what a coin! No wonder a variation of this type, made by a master engraver, currently holds the title of most expensive ancient coin ever sold. Cool, let's keep going with another Greek gold piece. Now we're headed to North Africa, to Kyrene, located on modern-day Libya, where this stater was struck between 322 and 313 BC. This was yet another colony, founded in the 7th century BC by Greek settlers from Thera, who were looking for better farmland than their rocky homeland could offer. It's kinda counterintuitive to think that a place like North Africa, typically known as this very dry region, for it being chosen for its more favorable conditions. But indeed, the area where Kyrene was located, if you look at it on satellite maps, it's remarkably greener compared to the surrounding areas. And having in mind that current theories point out that during antiquity the Mediterranean had much more rainfall, plus the presence of some sizable rivers in the region, it's actually plausible to consider that this was a place where a polis could thrive. And thrive it did. Some of the main exports from Kyrene were grain. It was yet another agricultural exporter, but it became famous for its production of a peculiar plant called silphium. It was prized across the Mediterranean as a wonder medicine and a spice. Kyrene also had access to the rich gold reserves from Africa. It probably acquired gold by trade, which allowed them to incorporate these valuable gold coins in their monetary standard. This coin was issued when the city was a subject of Egypt, its much larger rival to the east. Now, funnily enough, Egypt was by that time also ruled by the Greeks, the Ptolemaic dynasty. But here on the coin we don't see, at least in the obverse, any signs that they were under foreign rule. We have simply a nice image of a charioteer riding his quadriga, a 4-horse chariot, and around it we have the inscription Kyrenaion, or from the Kyrenaicans. Heading to the reverse, now we have a more direct reference to their Egyptian overlords. It's actually a very deliberate piece of Ptolemaic imagery here. It features their patron god, Zeus Ammon, holding his eagle. This was a syncretic deity, a mix of the Greek Zeus, holding his symbolic animal, the eagle, and we also have some visual elements of native Egyptian origin, in this case the ram's horn of Ammon. The Kyrenaicans themselves had their own cult of Ammon. It probably reached the city due to its proximity to Egypt, so the god on the coin was a fairly obvious choice. It was relatable to the Kyrenaicans, but also served as a reminder of Ptolemaic power. And finally, to the right of Zeus here, sadly in this example it's nearly completely off-plan, we have the name of a local magistrate responsible for the issue of this coin, a man called Xairios. Now for our next coin, let's do a huge leap, both in time and location. We leave the coast of North Africa in the 3rd century BC and we're headed to the British Isles in the 1st century AD. What we have here is a Celtic coin. The first coins of the Celts were inspired on Greek coins acquired by trade, but that was all the way in like the 4th century BC. By the 1st century AD, Celtic coinage was acquiring a distinctively local appearance. This coin we have here was issued by the Catuvelauni between 10 and 40 AD. This was a tribe allied to the Romans, and we can clearly see their strong commercial ties to the Romans manifested on the designs because, surprise, surprise, we have inscriptions in Latin here, in a Celtic coin of all places. The main design element on the obverse is this long wheat stalk at the center. Now, this could be yet another reference to a people with a particular preference to agrarian exploits. I mean, we're talking about ancient societies. They all had to have a pretty strong agrarian society because most of their population lived in the countryside. But in this particular case, I would argue this is not the reason. Because, you see, if we look back at older examples of Celtic coins, they were originally inspired on Greek coins, which featured in a lot of examples the god Apollo wearing a laurel crown. And as these coins were copied over and over and the designs became more and more abstract, one of the parts of the original design that was the most resilient to change was actually Apollo's laurel crown. I guess the pattern of leaves on a line was easy to replicate, and I would argue what we have here is all that was left from this design, and it was just incorporated in this coin. To the right and the left of this pseudo laurel crown wheat stalk thing, we have an abbreviation, CAMU, for Camulodunum, the city where this coin was made. On the reverse, on the other hand, we have a design that is a bit more reminiscent from the old Celtic designs from previous centuries. The original Greek prototypes on the reverse had a charioteer with his horses, and horses were very well known by the Celts. The people from Gaul, an example, had very capable cavalry. So, because of that familiarity with horses, we still have a fairly recognizable horse here, even after centuries of copying over and over. At the top, there's some kind of abstraction. It looks like a long palm branch for me. And at the bottom, once again in Latin script, we have the name of Cunobelinus, a client king of Rome, who issued these coins in his own name. Generally, issuing coins is one of the biggest signs of sovereignty, but in reality he was basically a vassal of Rome before the empire started conquering the region. This coin was in fact one of the very last issues of the Celts in Britain before Rome just conquered the island and abolished any Celtic monetary standards, imposing the denarius and the other imperial denominations in its place. And since we just mentioned Rome, we might as well wrap up this video with a Roman coin. Not one of the high Roman Empire from the time they conquered Britain, but one of the late Empire. So we're doing another huge leap in time here, where in fact this coin was made a little over a century before the final fall of the Western Roman Empire. This is a solidus of Emperor Valentinian I. These coins were made between 364 and 375 AD, and as you can see here, a huge change in iconography from we typically expect from Roman coins. These highly realistic depictions of the emperor we typically relate to Roman coins. Here, it's completely different. The late empire was a time of absolutist monarchs. The emperor was much more akin to like a king in the medieval sense compared to an emperor from the 1st century, despite there still being a number of old imperial institutions still in place when this coin was made. And the iconography, of course, followed this totalitarian trend. The emperor was not shown in a realistic way anymore. Rather, it's just a schematic portrait, meant to basically communicate that there was an emperor. That's all that mattered to you, a subject of his. And as we can see here, very monarchical-like visual elements. We have a jeweled robe Valentinian is wearing, very intricate, but especially, look at the diadem he's wearing on his head. Diadems like these were the old symbol of the Greek kings of the Hellenistic period. I mean, if you look at Hellenistic coins, kings are shown wearing a diadem like this, which is actually it's very shocking to see this on a Roman coin. Let's remember the Romans had a very strong anti-monarchical sentiment. It was very ingrained in their culture. After all, they deposed the original Roman monarchy to institute the republic. But again, by the 4th century AD, this idea of republicanism was long gone. Even if the republic, at least officially, the institution still existed. And as for the legends, which read Dominus Noster Valentinianus Pius Felix Augustus, we can see that trend even more clearly, particularly if we focus on the very beginning, the Dominus Noster part. It means our Lord in Latin. The old senators of Rome would be rolling in their graves if they knew that kind of message was being put on Roman coins. Now looking at the reverse, more of this cult to the leader here. We have a very imposing image of the emperor dominating the image right at the center. I actually enjoy the composition of this image very much. It's quite harmonious. The image of the emperor is very impactful, and this image, it looks good even with the considerable wear this coin has. I just enjoy it. So he's shown wearing his full set of armor. He holds on one hand a military standard, and on the other, a tiny little victory, which is crowning him with a tiny little laurel crown. Very cute. Now, interesting mix of imagery here. By the time this coin was made, the empire was Christian already, which we can see it shown in this very large cross to the left of the emperor. And there's even another cross right at the center of the standard he's holding to reinforce this Christian identity even more. Yet, on his hand we have a pagan symbol, the victory, which it's quite cool to see. Because the Romans were very pragmatic with the image they put on money. They were Christian already, yes, but the old pagan images, they were such a strong part of their culture, they were so ingrained in the idea of what you see on money, that they couldn't dispense of them that easily without probably causing some sort of unease with the population that was used to seeing that kind of stuff on their money. And finally, around the reverse, we have the legends, Restitutor Republicae, the restorer of the Republic. Interesting, yet another reference to the Republic, despite the Republic being an entity with very little power by that time. It's probable that these legends make more of a reference to the Roman state at large, rather than any republican authority, because it was the emperor who ruled by that time. And so, our little tour of gold coins comes to an end. We've seen in this video a group of marvelous gold coins from different civilizations and different moments in antiquity. And most importantly, I think that's the main message of this video. I want to show you a pattern here. Wherever we go in the ancient world, people choose gold as one of their clearest ways of storing value. For all of our modern payment systems and complex economy that we live in, yet to look at our forefathers and see gold playing such an important role for such a long time amongst so many different kinds of people, that's hard to ignore. Maybe our ancestors are trying to teach us a lesson here with what is really valuable and what is real money. So, what do you think? I hope you enjoyed this episode. Leave a like and consider subscribing if you did. Happy collecting, and I'll see you soon. Let me give a special thank you to all of my amazing channel members and Patreons for their generous support. This channel would not be the same without your help. And if you would like to be part of this list, have early access to my videos when they are uploaded to YouTube, and a series of other perks, make sure to check out my Patreon page and my members tab on YouTube. Thank you very much.